Welcome back to the 1009 podcast. We got a special guest here, seeing that it is Hate Week. We thought we might as well get probably the biggest South Carolina podcast out there, and a guy that I know annoys me a good bit every now and then, just because, you got to spark the rivalry every now. But we do have the man himself from the Spurs Up Show. How are you doing tonight?
What's up, boys? I appreciate you having me on. I'll tell you this, man, in the spirit of rivalry week, it's truly, I think you could argue, the best week of the college football season because rivalries are really what make it so special. I mean, growing up, man, I grew up born and raised in the state of South Carolina, obviously North Augusta, South Carolina to be specific. A lot of my buddies were Carolina fans, but a lot were Clemson fans as well. And it was the jabbing, the back and forth, the trash talk, all the other games were big, but like not wanting to lose this specific game because you didn't want to deal with 365 days of hell. Like that's what makes college football and college sports so special. So it's great to be chatting with you guys. I appreciate you having me on. And I think there's as much juice and as much energy going into the rivalry game as there's ever been going into this one, because I feel like for the longest, right, Clemson was going all the college ball playoffs and dominating the series. And even last year, I mean, it was a 2-touchdown spread. So this year, I feel like, guys, this is the first time in a while where neither side is really sure what's going to happen. And I think that's healthy for the rivalry. So I appreciate y'all having me on. Like I said, excited to talk about it. And happy early Thanksgiving, by the way, to all you guys.
Yes. Yeah.
You too.
Yeah. Super glad that, we're not in high school anymore. That, if we lose this game, you don't have to hear, in the middle of the day, but my team beat the team. And specifically us, I think all three of us, I can speak on this. We've kind of been looking forward to this game ever since we lost to NC State. It was I don't care about the rest of the games. It's we got one goal in mind. I don't even care if we make a bowl game. And like you said, I haven't felt that juice in 7, 8, 9 years. And not slighting it or anything, but the whole time it's last game of the season, that's a win. To get us to the ACC, that's a win. And then we're going to go to the Fiesta Bowl or Orange Bowl or whatever. I feel so good that it's back to when I was 13, and it was dude, we're going 8-4, but we got to beat that, we got to beat the last game of the season. So I'm super juiced up. I'm going to be down there, so I'm sure I'll get into a mess.
Something.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm super stoked, just like you are.
Yeah, this reminds me, guys. So I first became a diehard Gamecocks fan end of 2002, beginning of 2003, so I was 11 or 12 years old. So my introduction to the South Carolina Clemson rivalry was 63-17. Yeah, that was my first one. Made a bet with my middle school teacher. Obviously lost the bet. Had to put on an orange and purple paper chain, and at the bottom was a picture of the scoreboard. So that was my introduction to the South Carolina Clemson rivalry. Then, of course, the next year, the brawl. Corey Boyd fumbles on the opening kickoff. Clemson whooped South Carolina's ass. And, of course, the brawl at the end of the game that kept both teams out of a bowl game. So, I mean, you learn to hate the other side really quickly. But to your point, man, those days, those early 2000s matchup, that's all it was. It was 5-6 South Carolina against 5-6 or 6-5 Clemson. And you're fighting for your bowl lives. You're fighting for bragging rights. You're fighting for all that. So we're kind of back to that. I don't think either side is necessarily thrilled that that's the reality, but certainly it set in, to your point, a couple weeks ago, I think, for both sides, where in the midst of a disappointing season, you're not going to throw a parade and say you had a successful year if you win this game, but it at least takes some of the sting out of an otherwise lackluster year.
Yeah, no, parades are going up, but I think that leads us into Grayson's kind of first question of the day, rather, seamlessly here. And Grayson, I'll let you take it away, that first little bullet point that you had. But, the expectations this year were here. I think I picked us for the national championship. I was all in.
We all did.
Oh, we all did.
Yeah.
Guys, first game of the league, I had Clemson in my college football playoff. I really thought, I mean, I wanted Garrett Riley at South Carolina. There were a lot of Gamecock fans who were pissed off at that. When Dalvin Loggins was hired, I was like, I'd trade him right now. I really believed that Garrett Riley was that dude. And I'm not saying he's not going to be, but yeah, I mean, certainly the offensive side, especially beginning of the year, was not. And I think, I don't know if Cade Klubnik, I don't know how y'all feel about him, if he's that guy or not. I know he's come on of late, but anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it as far as both fan bases being on edge and that bringing extra juice to the rivalry. Then you also mentioned the piece about in prior editions, bowl game eligibility being on the line, and that's the case for South Carolina. If they win this game, they'll be bowl eligible, and that's only made possible because of that thrilling win this past Saturday against Kentucky. I mean, it's college football is just a world of, I think, overreactions. But did that win change your outlook on Shane or the coaching staff, the season at large, just because of, if they do win the Palmetto Bowl a second straight year, they're going bowling?
Did it change my outlook on the season as a whole? I would say no, because guys, the goal was to get back to 8-4. I think the goal was to get to 9-3. The expectation was to get 8-4, 7-5. I think would have been deemed as an okay season, and 6-6 or worse with Spencer Rattler and of course Juice Wells returning, who has not played all season and won't play on Saturday, per my understanding. But bringing those guys back, 6-6 or worse, was going to feel like a failure. So you don't move the goalposts this late in the season, and just because you beat Kentucky and just because you've won 3 in a row and 2 of those 3 coming against Jacksonville State and Vanderbilt, right? So, and again, no matter what happens on Saturday, that's what I'm saying. Like, it'll be great to beat the arch rival. You'd much rather go to a bowl game and get those 15 practices. And I think that's probably a scenario, guys, where Spencer Rattler will go ahead and say, hey, I'm getting ready for the NFL draft. You can get a head start on the whole quarterback competition. Lenoris Sellers will probably start the bowl game. Like, I think there's a lot of reasons, a lot of positives for it, but it's not going to change any Gamecock fans' mind on was the season a success or not. The answer is no. It doesn't matter what happens on Saturday. And I mean, it's to the note about Shane Beamer. It didn't change my mind on him either, because I haven't jumped ship on Shane Beamer. And I think most Gamecock fans haven't either. I mean, you're going to have some extremists out there that, they're going to say fire the coach the first sign they see of losing a game or what have you. And I will say to that point that, it reinforced it for me this season. Like, Shane Beamer was a guy 3 months ago that could have walked on water. Probably Dabo Swinney somewhat similar. That, like, there was a point where, like, you couldn't say anything even slightly critical of the guy without being attacked by people left and right. And Beamer was at that point over this offseason after the way they finished last year. And after that Tennessee loss, guys, I mean, I just never thought I would have heard it so quick in the middle of year 3. People actually starting to question, hey, is this the guy for the long term? Like, I was really surprised to hear that, but what it went to show is no coach is immune to the effects of losing. But for the most part, I think Shane Beamer's in the good graces of Gamecock fans. I think Gamecock fans agree that, there are things he needs to do this offseason, like firing the defensive coordinator, looking at the rest of the staff, the strength and conditioning, winning in the transfer portal. This is going to be a pivotal portal cycle for those guys. So, but I don't think that Kentucky game, right, swayed one thing or the other. It was a great win. It was a win you needed to have. You beat Kentucky back-to-back for the first time since 2012, 2013, which just shows you how much of a thorn in the side the Cats have been for South Carolina over the last decade. So that's a team you need to beat on a year-in, year-out basis. So to beat them, to protect the home field, to win a third in a row. But, guys, I would say this. The Kentucky win was big for the reasons I mentioned, but I think it was equally as big because what it sets up this weekend, right? Like, if you'd have lost that game,
oh, absolutely,
all you're looking at is bragging rights. Like, you're playing for no postseason, nothing's on the line. This game would have lost a lot of that energy, that juice that we were talking about. Not saying that it still wouldn't have had a lot, but you get what I'm saying. So, no, to answer your question, short form, no, the Kentucky game didn't necessarily change my mind. If anything, it made me more worried about the Clemson game from the standpoint of, before the Kentucky game, the narrative was, okay, South Carolina at home, their offense is elite, they're great, they're this, they're that, but on the road, they struggle. I would argue Kentucky was the first time they've played a really good defense at home, and Kentucky just shut them down. I mean, 50 total rushing yards, 27 of those came from Spencer Rattler scrambling. The offense, 250 or so yards of offense, and Clemson's defense is a lot better than Kentucky's. So I think it made me a little bit more concerned in regards to how South Carolina is going to move the football. And that's certainly something I know we'll probably talk about, but it's going to be a real mystery for them to solve, is that Clemson defense. But no, nothing major changed. Just happy to get a W. That was the first time that South Carolina beat an opponent where you're like, hey, that's a quality win, which really says something about the type of season it's been for South Carolina.
Going forward, before we continue on, I may have like a touch of pushback on Beamer just because we've seen kind of the transformative approach that coaches can quickly take on a program, right? And so, do I think he's a good leader? Yes, I think the guys love him, but I think that the coaching decision, similar to what you talked about, are the total aspects of a coach. But without really diving too deep into that, what are your expectations for Shane Beamer, both in the short term and the long term? And, what do you believe he has to do to actually achieve that?
Well, and Jacob, to your point too, I want to make it very clear that I'm sure you guys have followed along long enough that I'm not someone that I'm sunshine and rainbows, garnet glasses. Quite the opposite. Like I've been more critical than any other Gamecock into this year of Shane Beamer. Like I just on a weekly basis, I have wanted to vomit because of the press conference comments and the clips and like Shane Beamer making himself. I mean, I said it when he broke his foot. I was embarrassed. Like, and that did not sit well with a lot of people. But when I heard that, I was honestly embarrassed to be a fan of South Carolina. Like and I said that publicly. And again, not everybody resonated with that. So to your point, Shane Beamer's not perfect. He's eerily similar to Dabo, though. Like he and Dabo are just cut from the same cloth.
The mannerisms are there. Yeah.
The mannerisms for sure. Like their styles, the CEO and being the players coach. And it's funny. I joked with someone a couple weeks ago that I felt like Shane and Dabo were in like a text chain of like, who can say the more ridiculous thing this week in a press conference? Because it was like they were going back and forth for a while, like of just saying outlandish things. But back to your question, Jacob, the short-term expectations, I think he needs to fire his defensive coordinator and make some big splashes, make a big splash in the portal this offseason. This is a massive portal cycle for South Carolina. They were hurt by the portal last year, and Gamecock fans didn't want to admit it. But when you lost Jaheim Bell, Marshawn Lloyd, Jordan Birch, Gilbert Edmond, you lost some quality SEC starters, and they went out and got some guys. Don't get me wrong, but they didn't get SEC quality talent to fill those voids. You look at the offensive line and who they brought in, guys from Yale, Western Illinois, Mercer, Charlotte. And guys, wouldn't you know it, Carolina can't run the football and they can't protect the quarterback. Who could have ever seen that coming, right? So, I mean, you got to go out and get some guys. And I know it's easier said than done because the transfer portal is extremely competitive. NIL is extremely competitive. But you got to go out and get some contributors in the transfer portal. So you got to win in the portal. You need to fire your defensive coordinator and Clayton White. You need to make some changes on that side of the football no matter what you do. Next year needs to be a bounce-back year, guys. Again, easier said than done because you're not going to have Spencer Rattler. And I'm high on Lenora Sellers, but, I mean, is he going to be better than Spencer Rattler was this year? So you hope the pieces around him are better. And, you obviously make a bowl game. There's never an excuse for not doing that. What's the expectation for win total? I think we need to let the roster come together and figure out just what the schedule is, which will come out, I believe, in like mid-December before we determine that. But for the long term, guys, I think it's fair to expect that Shane Beamer can get the Gamecocks football program to a place where they are winning 8 to 9 games per year consistently. And every 3 to 4 years, either they've got the right quarterback, they're a veteran team, the schedule works in their favor, whatever it might be, where they can win double-digit games and make a 12-team college football playoff. And I know to some Clemson fans are going to hear that. They're going to laugh. They're going to scoff. But you got to have some sort of expectations. I mean, you can't just accept 6-6 forever because that's exactly what you'll be. And trust me, I know the history probably better than everybody listening to this. So I get Carolina has lived in mediocrity forever, right? I get that. But I think that's a realistic goal. Like, I think that can happen at the University of South Carolina. You look across the board, if I just gave you a blind test of here's the facilities, here's the stadium, here's the fan base, you'd say, okay, yeah, there's no reason why that team can't win. But then you put a block C on it and Garnet Black, you can go, oh, well, I mean, they're destined to suck because they always have. So you got to break that mold somehow. I think those are fair expectations. I think those are reasonable. And to the point of Beamer, I think he's going to get till 2025 to really get it going. Now, what does that mean? I think winning 8+ games, and at that point, if South Carolina's still meddling in the 5 to 6 win range, guys, I don't know. Because at that point, I think you know what you have. So those are the short-term, long-term. Again, I've always said forever, guys, I think South Carolina can be that type of program. I don't think winning an SEC championship is realistic with the way the SEC is expanding. But getting to a 12-team playoff, I think South Carolina is a program like an Ole Miss, like a Kentucky, like a Missouri that they can reach that goal maybe once every 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. I mean, I do genuinely agree with that sentiment. It is astounding that South Carolina, to your point, has been so mediocre across their history with a passionate fan base that fills up that stadium with fantastic facilities. And look, I have my qualms about Columbia, South Carolina, but it's in a metropolitan area, right? I mean,
guys, to your point, Jacob, South Carolina has won 9 games or more 7 times in their history. Like that is, when you think about how long they've been playing football, like that's hard. But I mean, I told Gamecock fans last year repeatedly when Carolina went 8-4, right? Beat Clemson into the year, go 8-4. I was like, appreciate this season. It's only the 15th time this has ever happened. So like the numbers show this may only happen like 4 or 5 times the rest of your life. That I know that sounds crazy and nobody wants to hear it, but in the short term, appreciate it. But that's what South Carolina should be striving for yearly. And I think Gamecock fans, there's no Gamecock fan out there who's being honest who would turn that down. Because last year was a lot of fun. That was a fun year. You go 8-4, 9-3, you're having a fun year. You're winning some rivalry games. You're winning some big games. And you're at least knocking on the door. And when you're going out there and recruiting and transfer portal, and you can really look a kid in the face and say, hey, we're only 1 or 2 prospects away from getting to the next level. You can't do that when you're 5-6 going into week 13, man, or you finish 6-6, or you're going 5-7, or you're getting blown out by this team and that team. So that progress has got to be there. And guys, you know as well as I do, Steve Spurrier completely changed the expectations in Columbia. And so that's why I say that's why you felt, I think, or that's how I think you've seen the pressure on Shane Beamer, because Gamecock fans, they want to win. You got a taste of it, and they want to get back to that. So, you know, as much as this fan base loves Shane Beamer, no coach is immune from the effects of losing. And that's why I say year 5, I think that's as long as he'll get if they don't get it going.
I mean, we saw that firsthand with Dabo this year. I had a guy from Spartanburg, obviously, call
Tyler from Spartanburg.
His head. Like, this is the first year that we've lost, what, 3
I agreed
or 4,
with a lot of Tyler's points. I want that on the record. I agreed
he
with
got outside of football
Tyler's points
with that. But yeah.
That was electric. I thought that was electric, guys, honestly.
That sparked the season.
I
think that's why we beat Notre Dame.
What did y'all, this is kind of taking it down a different road, but what did y'all think about the people that said that was Dabo planted that? Like that was a planned thing. You believe that, or you think that was a random guy?
I
want to believe it's so bad.
Not a random guy. One of my best buddies, he's from Spartanburg. He actually knows the guy. Not a plant. I can say that with 100% certainty.
That felt too genuine to be like scripted.
You heard the emotion in the voice. He was
when you bring out Psalms, whatever, you know, pride comes before the fall. Right. Like, you know, he was sitting in that deer stand.
He's been stewing that since Duke.
Yeah.
Dabo would not have put that "Tell Me Bowden" line in a script. I know that. That's what really.
That's true. Yeah, we're not going to give him any more credit, but yeah, that was electric. One of the best radio content that's ever come out of any sports program in a while. So I appreciate that. You mentioned, this is just a little tidbit. We talked about this earlier in our group message. You mentioned how bad your defensive coordinator is this year. The graphic that you put up this morning, let's discuss a little bit positionally. Let's dive into the game a little bit. You did have the coaching as a tie, so we'll start there, you know, umbrella level view. And you wanted Garrett Riley last offseason, right? You still think he might not be the guy. I understand he hasn't really proven it this year. So you wanted Garrett Riley last year. You want to fire your defensive coordinator, and ours has been pretty freaking good. Dabo's won 2 national titles. I disagree with him on some things. He has won 2 national titles. I want that to be said. Your coach is 5-6.
Go on.
Listen, I understand where you're going. We talked about this on the show today too. And admittedly, when I was doing side note, by the way, that position unit comparison graphic, that is, I don't think there's a graphic that pisses people off more on a weekly basis, or in the content space generates more banter, which is the goal.
So
it's a lot of fun. No, it's not a bit. It's for real. No, I'm just saying though, that is one that like nobody's ever, not all parties are going to see eye to eye no matter what, because there's going to be
a lot of compliments on
position group. There's going to be one position group that people are like, hey, what is this about? So when I looked at coaching, to your point, I was very close to giving Clemson the nod, and then I stopped. I agree with you. What is Wes Goodwin or Godwin?
I have no idea.
I think it's Godwin.
Godwin. Well, Clemson's DC runs laps around Clayton White. That there is no question about that. South Carolina has the advantage in the special teams department. I know that most people don't care about it, but I got to give Pete Limbo some love.
Dude,
y'all won that game last year because of that.
We saw it last year. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm just most fan bases, like when I do we'll do preseason stuff with other SEC teams, and I'm like, let's talk about y'all special teams. They're like, why? So most people don't give a damn, but I know
We
y'all
haven't had a
respect
special
it as
teamer
well.
since like 2012.
We
or when
learned
CJ
quickly.
Spiller was here.
Yeah.
Our kicker this year is 50%. It's legitimately worth 5 to 7 points.
Yanked him off a beach. Yeah.
That's not a joke.
Right.
So to the rest of it, though, it really comes down to OC and the head coach. You know, I factor in when I do this. I factor in resume for sure. I factor in experience, but I also factor in what's happened to this point this year.
Vibes.
And I look at who's been better, Garrett Riley at Clemson or Dabble Loggins at South Carolina. And admittedly, I'm a little harder and a little bit more harsh on Clemson's coaching staff because they've got far more talent to work with than South Carolina does. Let's just call it what it is. I know the receivers aren't there. I understand that.
We've had better
I know
years of receiver. But
Klubnik, suspect, but like you look at the recruiting profile, recruiting rankings,
They should be
I
good.
think they've got more bullets in the gun. Like, let's just put it that way. So I don't know who's done a better job. Has Garrett Riley done a better job at Clemson? Dabble Loggins, I mean, I think you look at what he's done for Spencer Rattler, you could say he's done an incredible job. And then there's some games like last week against Kentucky where I'm like, damn, maybe Dabble Loggins doesn't know what he's doing, right? This is a guy that was once labeled as the worst play caller in the NFL. So as much as I wanted Garrett Riley at South Carolina, right now I'm looking at the bodies of work. And I know that Garrett Riley's got more of a resume in college, but I don't know. And then I go to the head coach because this obviously weighs a lot. Shane Beamer in his third year, they're 5-6. I understand he's unproven, right? He is a guy at South Carolina that has done more with less. I understand that Dabo Swinney, national championship head coach, 6 straight college football playoffs. But y'all know as well as I do that the game is changing. And what I see on one side is a coach that's not embracing transfer portal. I don't know that he's really embracing an IL. He's cutting his own nose off spite his face. He lost to Florida State because he had to go pull a kicker that was an accountant in New York. He couldn't just go get a portal guy that had kicked. Like, and I understand the energy. I get that. I would expect nothing less from Tiger fans to defend Dabo. But, like, these are the same people that were calling for this man's job this year that want to tell me how great of a coach he is. So, like, where was that energy a couple weeks ago after the loss to NC State or the loss to Duke to open it up? Or, like, so these two coaches 1-1 against each other. Is it a little bit of bias? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not a little bit, but as we sit right now, I guess it's what's more important, the titles that Dabo won like 4 years ago, or how good of a coach is he in the college football landscape of 2023? And I don't know how good of a coach Dabo Swinney is in this landscape because he doesn't want to embrace the portal. I mean, is anybody going to argue that?
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
Oh, no.
We've
complained about it ad nauseum weekly, especially for losses.
I've complained about it. I've ranted.
At least I know with Beamer that he's going to do that. He's going to go out there
in the mix
and do that.
Okay, but listen. When I have so many qualms on recruiting, NIL. Trust me, it's extensive. I've aired my grievances to many people, both around the program, in the program, and formerly within the program. So to get that out of the way. However, when we talk about coaching, especially for a game unit comparison, we're talking about 60 minutes of football. I don't think we need to factor in, is he going to get a portal wide receiver this offseason? That has no bearing on these 60 minutes, right? It's just who can get their guy motivated? Who can get their guy motivated more? And as we've kind of seen, and we will continue to see, especially Saturday with Harbaugh, how many points is a head coach really worth over 60 minutes of football? Vegas says 0. So, and then listen, how do I put this? You would look at Garrett Riley this year specifically a lot differently if we did not lead the nation in fumbles inside the 5, and average amount of points within the 20. And that's not play calling. That's trust me, that's players, right? I mean, Garrett Riley's not telling them to fumble at the 1 and Duke houses at 99 yards, right? So that's a 14-point swing right there. So if we pull back that veil a little bit of not trying to dive into what we're going to do this offseason, last offseason, next 5 years, I think these 60 minutes, and for some reason the coaching thing really got in my head. I don't know why. But for these 60 minutes, like, I think it's undoubtedly, us. I think it's a no-brainer. It's us. Now, I think that your wide receiver talent is so far beyond us, and your quarterback play is so far beyond us that it might not matter.
I will say this, though, to wide receiver. I gave South Carolina the nod, but I'll tell you this. I mean, I think Clemson's got more quality bodies in regards to contributors, but there's only one Xavier Legette on the field on Saturday. Like that was the biggest difference. But I mean, in regards to that, for South Carolina, it's Xavier Legette and then kind of just whoever shows up. Nick Harbor's been coming along for sure, but I mean, I think Clemson might have more like they got a bunch more guys who have actually made plays than it's like South Carolina where it's like Xavier Legette, a tight end, and then it just drastically goes downhill. So
I really don't.
To be fair, dude, I got pushed back for giving a push on the tight ends. And I was like, I don't know if y'all watch Jake Brenningstool, but like, damn it, his stats are what Carolina's tight ends are combined. Like this dude is a huge part of the Clemson offense. So
he's a red zone
hella respect. I love too how that graphic was littered with orange, but it's the push on the coaching that really pops off.
Yeah, so that's right. It's the times we're pissed off.
It's never enough. It's never enough. But to the coaching for 60 minutes, I do give Beamer too and that little bit extra because Clemson should have beaten South Carolina last year. Like they had a better team. They had more talent. And I would argue that Shane Beamer and his coaching staff out-coached Clemson at their place. So
maybe
we decided to do that punt return where
as soon as we did like ring around the rosy on the punt return,
tried to out Beamer ball.
I would actually say Dabo may be worth like -3 points. That dude's been a moron recently, dude.
Right.
Like this guy's like, hey, you know what would be sick? A fake punt on our own 17 in the first quarter, and you're like, this is never worked in the history of football. Why are we doing it? And he's like, hey man, like I just got a feeling we're gonna do it. We're just gonna do it. You're like, shut the hell up.
There's no analytics involved in that whatsoever.
No.
You know what I love though about the coaching side of things, guys, and I'm glad we can both laugh because I feel like both fan bases, if you want any indication that these coaches are so similar to each other, both fan bases, like there's no better coach in the country when your team is winning than Shane Beamer or Dabo Swinney, and there is no coach that is more nauseating than Shane Beamer or Dabo Swinney. None. For both sides. And I know both sides would agree with that. Like, it's like the same reason you love them and you praise them when the team is winning. Those are the same reasons you're like, this dude is the worst when you're losing. Like,
whoever is responsible for putting the idea in Dabo's head that we were 4 plays away from an undefeated season, and he said that like 6 weeks in a row.
That's like Muschamp-ish. That's Muschamp type of talk. And Beamer's done the same thing. And I mean, that's what's unfortunate is like, now you have to come to grips with, I mean, it's already in the books now that through 3 seasons, right? Shane Beamer needed to win like 8 games to break the record. Will Muschamp, the best 3-year start record-wise in South Carolina football history. That's sickening. I mean, that's just truly sickening.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why this year for Gamecock fans has been so disgruntling because it's like you have to live with that fact that Will Muschamp has the best record through 3 years. A guy who didn't even remotely come close to beating Clemson. Not even remotely.
He was comical. So. That dude was just comic.
Should have kept out.
That's the equivalent of like the
Shane Elliott.
Should have kept Shane Elliott. That's your guy. South Carolina's guy going forward.
Hindsight's 20/20, but I would have taken Sean Elliott over Will Muschamp any day of the week. That was just abysmal. That was brutal. We could have a whole combo, guys, about that era and like I don't know if you guys were around for this, but like I sort of, my first big break was the Fire Will Muschamp video. I became the Fire Muschamp guy. I was the Fire Muschamp guy for like 2 years. I was so happy when he actually, I was so happy when he actually got fired because it was really exhausting being that guy. Like, just accepting. Well, just accepting that your program sucked and your team sucked. And I mean, it's crazy to think where TSUS is, thinking about that we built the business off the backs of 4-8 and 2-8 off Will Muschamp. So there's nothing that Shane Beamer can throw at me that I can't handle. I can assure you.
Yeah, there's like a million little. I mean, we're not like a Clemson podcast. We all went to Clemson. We're trying to lean more into that. But there's like a million different Clemson things that popped up when we won 2 national championships in 4 years. It's a hell of a lot easier to do then than when you're 2-10.
Yeah. Well, that's what always humors me too, is I'm sure you guys see on social media that like TSUS is a closet Clemson fan, and I'm like, guys, I started this business back in January 2017 when I started making content anyway. Yeah. And I'm like, if I was a Clemson fan, or even if I had converted and I had the opportunity to convert back, and if I chose willingly to cover the Will Muschamp-led Gamecocks football program versus the Clemson football program that had just, I think, either won a national championship or gone to one or was like top 5 in the country, if I chose that route, I'm either a complete idiot or the worst entrepreneur on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Like nobody chooses the life of a Gamecock. Let me just make that very clear. You're born in it. It sticks in your blood, and you have to live through it, my friend. Nobody is just bandwagoning that.
Question.
Let's call it for it, especially during the Muschamp era. Like, give me a break.
That was the worst. Yeah. That was the worst.
And those were 3 years that we were there, and they were the best times ever.
Right. Dude, those games, and that's what I'm saying about this game upcoming Saturday. It's so much fun going into a game where it's like, man, it's a touchdown spread. Who knows? Like, both fan bases are kind of like, on edge. Bro, those games were snooze fests. Those games, I mean, even Clemson fans got bored of winning because it was, I mean, there's nothing worse than it's rivalry week. I'll never forget 2019. It's rivalry week, and the spread opens at like 26.5. And you're just like, what's the point? Like, what is even the point? And you got Todd Ellis on the play-by-play. Carolina in 2019 gets a goal line stand to open it, and they're going crazy. In the back of your mind, you're like, bro, we're going to get killed. Like, and sure enough, I think the score was like 38-3 in that game. So, I mean, that
was a fun one, though.
Those teams, like, you talk about, like, how much pressure's on each side this Saturday. And there's pressure for sure, right? Because for the winner, it puts a Band-Aid on kind of a lost season or a hurt season. The loser, it's going to be just pure turmoil for the entire offseason.
It'll be a long.
But those Clemson teams had more to lose because they were destined for the playoff, but like they didn't give a damn because they just knew they were so much better than South Carolina. Like those Trevor Lawrence teams, it was like NFL against JV. Like that's what the games looked like.
I don't know if you know any of our background. I mean, you obviously don't, but we all 3 were student trainers for the football team from 2016 to 2020.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So look, I was like Trevor. I was beside Trevor on the sidelines when he came out, dude. And like we would talk about like I had him and Justin Fields like his junior year or his sophomore year. We like talked about like who I started in fantasy football, like in the middle of games. I would ask guys after the game, like, hey, how many different plays did we run? And I will never forget this. It was after the Georgia Tech game. Tremaine Ankrum tells me we ran 6 different plays the entire game. And we just ran like trap and goes. Like that was
70-7.
Yeah, and we put up 70. So like that was like back in those days. It was right. It was not worry about South Carolina for 12 weeks. And then 30 minutes before kickoff, it's, oh, shit, if we lose, the season's done. Like, it's over. Right. We'll have no more – and I'll go jump off a bridge, right? But for 12 weeks, it's nothing. And then, obviously, we get into the game. The games go how they go. But you're right, dude. I just can't get over the thought of Clemson losing this week because the season is – gone.
There's no redeeming it. It doesn't matter who we play in a bowl game in Myrtle Beach at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. It's going to be a lost season.
Well, what's going to be funny too is if South Carolina does end up winning, and we go back to that whole push on the coaching thing, all the Clemson people that'll be calling for Dabo's job, and I'll be like, well,
Colin show is going to be, rated R.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is we got to get a quarterback. I've talked to the boys about this also extensively, and. Cade's not the guy, okay? I can say that firmly. He's not the guy. I don't think in that class that there was a better guy to take, if that makes sense. Like, we kind of see how Drew Allard was at Penn State. And, look, it's early within their years. We're only sophomore year. Obviously, they can develop, Rattler's developed into a good quarterback, and he's 23, right? So he's 3 years older than our guy. But he doesn't have that dog.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah, we missed, but we don't have anybody behind him. And then we don't have a quarterback that we took last year. So if Cade doesn't develop it, I'm seriously worried that we may we may go through another stretch of fear the thumb, all that bullshit. You know what I mean? Like there's a serious chance here that if we don't win this week, because I do believe in Shane Beamer kind of long term. This year was bad, but he's recruiting better. You got the facilities. I think you have more NIL backing than Clemson does. And if we don't win this year, I don't know, man. Like, I got a real bad feeling.
Speaking of quarterback, and I'm only bringing this up because I saw this on my good buddy Brad Crawford on social media mentioned that a name that may enter the portal is Will Rogers from Mississippi State. Boy, he would be fun to watch in Garrett Riley's offense. That's all I'm saying. That might be.
We'll take him.
That might be. But I mean, to the Cade Klubnik thing.
I wish I could believe in that.
How is he still starting when he openly runs whatever he wants and doesn't run what they call?
That's how dire it is behind him,
Helms.
We have
Hunter Helms is our second quarterback.
We have one actually recruited quarterback, right? And he can't crack the two walk-ons that are ahead of them. So our only actual quarterback on roster is a high 4-star, right? We recruited well, I guess, but he can't crack the 3 deep on the chart. Like Bear Bryant's grandson is our 3rd string. You know what I mean? Like Hunter Tyson would be
only portal guy ever, by the way.
Yeah, is a fantastic walk-on quarterback. He is, but he shouldn't be our 2 deep. You know, like so.
Well, I'll tell you this: Cade Klubnik, hell hath no wrath. Like if he goes off script against South Carolina and loses the football game, I can tell you that right now.
Put that in words.
Listen, I obviously it's no secret who I want to see win, but I don't even want to see that for him because
there are forgivable sins.
You talk about what he did in the Miami game. If that were to happen Saturday, forget it. Dude, he will never be. Yeah. He won't be allowed to come back. He won't be allowed to come back.
Klubnik. I'm the biggest Cade Klubnik hater. I promise. I think he has all the tools in the world, but I think he's a literal squirrel. Like, he's got no idea what's going on, man. And he's just like, I see some grass. I'm going to go. And then it's 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he gets destroyed because he's 180 pounds and fumbles it. Like, way to go, Cade. You did real good.
And I think on the football note, guys, I think that's why for South Carolina, the key Saturday night has to be to key in on Maffa and Shipley, because I think most feel that if it comes down to a quarterback battle, Rattler against Klubnik, that plays well into South Carolina's favor. Yeah. But it's much easier said than done, right? I mean, Maffa's been – I actually took it was a Prize Picks play. I think the total touchdowns for Shipley, rushing touchdowns, was like 11.5. And I took the under because I was like, dude, this Maffa kid is for real. He's legit. He's going to get a ton of carries. And sure enough, I mean,
Shipley's going to get hurt.
Well, that too. Yeah, that too.
So. Shipley's like, I forgot how to hold on to a football for a little bit there.
Right. Every inside the 5 carry. Yeah.
What are we
he's probably got like 3 touchdowns going towards that prop bet that he just fumbled away.
That's just
literally at the one.
Spiller never had to figure out how to like hold the ball through a hole. He's like, I'm faster than everybody. I'm just going to run past everybody. So how can you expect him to teach poor little old Shipley, how to hold the football when he's going through the hole? Because he's going to fumble it every time. The main difference maker, I'll say, if it does become a quarterback battle, Avion Terrell and Nate Wiggins. Total equalizer. Rattler can have the game of his life, or have to lean on Rattler. He's throwing great balls, dimes, but at the end of the day, Nate Wiggins still might be in his hip pocket right there.
Have you guys noticed on social media that matchup between Leggett and Wiggins that's been talked about all week? And I mean,
it's got the most juice for sure.
Somebody pointed out to me, they were like, "Hey, just so you know, this is silly because Clemson plays zone; they don't play man." But for fun, if we're talking key matchups, yeah, that one's gotten a lot of juice for sure. Leggett against Wiggins. So I mean, dude, listen, if I'm Clemson defensively, I couldn't believe how, and I guess I could say this for a lot of teams, but in that game against Kentucky, like, how do you leave 17 101? How do you leave 17? Oh, like, they have one guy. Like, if there's one guy, if you're a defense, you're Wes Godwin, whatever. My game plan is somebody other than 17 is going to beat me. Like, if we lose, fine.
Right.
But somebody else is going to have the game of their life because I'm not letting this guy do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and again, it's much easier said than done. Like, Xavier Legette is a specimen, no doubt. But and South Carolina's going to have to find ways to get in the football despite that. Again, my biggest concern is, can they have any semblance of balance running the football? Because 3rd and long is where dreams go to die for the South Carolina offense. I mean, you guys see the sack numbers. Rattler's been running for his life. He was sacked twice against Kentucky, but I mean, he had 10 carries in that game against Kentucky. Those weren't designed runs. Those were he was scrambling out of the pocket, practically running for his life, and made something happen with his legs. I think he'll have to have that type of performance again. But I mean, you're going to have to get the football to your playmakers for the Gamecocks, and whether it's Wiggins covering him or whoever, you got to give 17 his chances and may the best man win. And if it's Clemson's man, so be it. But I think you got to go down swinging.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed from that Kentucky game, that big boy they had in the middle, I forget his name, but number 0.
I literally posted, it's not tweeted anymore, but I posted during the game, simply put, Deion Walker, who is number 0.
Yeah.
Deion Walker is making the South Carolina offensive line his bitch. I literally posted. I was like, I don't know how else to phrase it. He is making the South Carolina offensive line his bitch. So Tyler Davis, Row, who I know whose name I screw up every single time, but
good luck.
you got to be licking your chops if you're those guys.
That's literally, by the way, how you say the name. So that's it.
Yeah.
Row.
That was pretty spot on, honestly.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Like that dude needs a nickname. I hope he has one.
Rook.
Okay, that's a lot easier.
That's 4 letters in his 4 letters in his first name that we just pull out, and that's
There you go.
Rook.
Right. That's it.
But like also on the defensive side, what I look forward to is the play from probably like 2 of the best linebackers in the country with Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter. Trotter's been one of the best blitzing linebackers we've seen all season. How is that going to match up against offensive line? Because Godwin is kind of like in the Brent Venables, he just loves to blitz. And we see that a lot. So I know, like you said, South Carolina gives up a ton of sacks. So is that where probably in the trenches is where this game is going to be defined at?
Absolutely. And I think they got to do a lot of what they did last year up in Clemson, which is getting Spencer Rattler out of the pocket, rolling him out and letting him go downfield because he's got a strong enough arm. He's really good on the run, again, as you guys saw last year and what he did with Juice Wells. So I think the game plan's got to be similar to him. I mean, guys, the Gamecocks couldn't run the football last year, and they found a way to produce some offense and make some plays and make things happen. They took some risks in that game, went for it on 4th down. As we talked about before, special teams was huge. But, I mean, guys, you cannot be naive enough to think you're going to go in this game and drop back and have 5 seconds to throw. And it's just not going to happen. I mean, South Carolina's offensive line, for as much as I will give them credit, they have, I think, the continuity has been much better of late. They've taken some steps forward, right? Because admittedly, I mean, guys, they're playing 2 true freshmen on the offensive line in Big Tree Babalade and Trovon Bowen. These 2 kids,
That's a name.
highly regarded prospects, right? You know, they're good players for sure. I mean, they're a lot better than some of the transfer portal guys they brought in. That's for damn sure. But you cannot realistically sit there and think that you're going to just, drop back and Spencer Rattler's going to be playing 7-on-7, especially, again, guys, if you can't get Mario Anderson going at all, and I mean, to your point, Deion Walker completely stuffed that last week for Kentucky. Their linebackers are really good. And, of course, Trotter and Carter are going to be just a completely different level. I have a lot of respect for those guys. I think the best duo in college football at that spot. So I think for South Carolina, you almost have to look at this, guys, I think, like the Georgia game maybe. I don't know that Clemson's on that level, but, I mean, you expect to not have a lot of time. You need to have a lot of extensions of the run game on the outside, right? Get it to your playmakers. Let them make plays in space. The quick passing game has got to supplement the run, and then you take your shots downfield. I think that's how you got to operate, guys. I think Spencer Rattler in the passing game, they've got to carry you. And, guys, I said it last week going to Kentucky. What was the key for that game? And it's such low-hanging fruit, but it was very simple. Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette, your best players, had to make plays. And in this Clemson game, I'll take it a step further. Spencer Rattler cannot be good. He has to be special to beat Clemson Saturday night. He has to be special. Like, he's got to, under duress, under pressure, be willing to take licks and deliver the football to the spot it needs to go. Like, because he's going to be under pressure. He's going to be under duress. There is no planet where this game is played where this offensive line holds their own for 60 minutes. I'm sorry. It's just not happening. So you got to
Right.
get creative if you're Dabble Loggins. At times, he's done a good job of scheming around it. But as you guys know, I mean, there's only so much you can do. And again, you saw in that graphic I released, offensive line, defensive line, Clemson has the advantage. South Carolina overcame that last week when I gave Kentucky the advantage. But I mean, Clemson at both spots, I would say, is probably better than Kentucky was. So it's a tall task. I mean, it's going to take a great effort. But when you got a quarterback, you got a chance, man. And Spencer Rattler, he can have that special night. We'll just see if he does it.
Yeah, I mean, the O-line we saw opening night in Charlotte, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I didn't know who the SEC team was, but it sounds like some of those portal guys have been superseded.
And I mean, in the preseason, everybody's hopes are so high, and nobody wants to hear anything just even remotely critical. At least some don't. And I do position unit grades before the season starts. So I graded the offensive line like a D+. Like, this team lost Jalen Nichols, their best offensive lineman, in the spring game due to injury. We saw who they brought in, a bunch of FCS transfers. And I was like, listen, I don't think they're going to be very good. I'm sorry to tell you. And people got all upset. And then the first game happens. And I literally said the week following, hey, listen, if you're Beamer and company, tell these FCS scrubs to hit the portal and start true freshmen. Like, and I had no problem saying that because it was just the reality. And guess what? A lot of them guys from week one, they don't play anymore. And I don't think that's by accident, right? It's just they weren't very good.
No.
You
That's
roll the dice on some
yeah.
portal guys, and they stunk, and it is what it is, and you keep it moving, and hopefully you live and you learn. But, yeah, it's to say that it's been a tumultuous season for the offensive line. God bless Spencer Rattler. The season he's had with the cast of characters around him and that offensive line blocking for him, it's out. I mean, Clemson's a playoff team if they have Spencer Rattler. I'm confident in saying that.
Yeah, I'd second that notion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just glad he's upright, honestly, because I mean, even from the first game, they've improved. Sounds like it's just a miracle.
He's taken some licks this year that I was just happy to see him get up.
Right. I mean, it's been
maybe. No, you don't wish injury. I won't even say it. You don't wish
no.
any player. You don't wish injury. I stopped myself because I'm a gentleman. It almost came off the tongue, but
that takes away from the game, so I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah,
no. I want best on best.
We're civil. We're civil right now.
Whatever's available.
We don't need to be wishing for any Jordan Travis situations in here. That's no problem.
No. I mean, was the playoff committee really a touching tribute and already kicking them out of the playoff.
That's tough. That's tough, man. Kick a man while he's down. That's tough.
Yeah, I mean they're at 5.
Kicking right now. Sorry.
God, Bailey's our resident comedian.
I mean, took too much time. I think we took too much time off his. Hey, it's been an hour.
Dude, listen, great conversation, guys. And I will tell you this because I'm not trying to butter you guys up, I promise, but it's going to drop tomorrow anyways. And you didn't ask, but I figured this will just humor you. I am picking Clemson in this game. I'm going Clemson 27-20. I don't trust South Carolina's line of scrimmage. I don't trust their O-line. I think they got away with it last week. And I think Clemson last year, they lost that game because they stopped giving the football to Will Shipley. They stopped running the football.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. And weirdly enough, guys, the road team has had a wild amount of success in this series. So as much as you'd think home field advantage matters a lot, I mean, it does, but does it really? So,
night atmosphere would be interesting early. I think that.
So, I mean, I don't want to be right on this one, but guys, a couple weeks ago, I never thought South Carolina was going to win 4 in a row to close out the season. And I still feel that way. So we'll see what happens. But I just that offensive performance against Kentucky, I think really it put a bad taste in my mouth. And I don't know how South Carolina is going to move the football consistently enough to match Clemson. Now, if the turnovers happen, I think if the Gamecocks win the turnover battle +2 or more, we're having a different conversation. And I know you guys, Clemson's turned the football over an insane amount for whatever reason. But if Clemson can take care of the football, I think that the Tigers come out victorious. And so that's the way I'm going in this one.
One more pick. Biggest game outside of our lovely state of South Carolina, Ohio State, Michigan. Any deep thought into that yet as we progress towards rivalry Saturday?
Yeah, I'm it's not too deep a thought, but I'm going to go Ohio State. I got to stick with it too. You know why? Because I picked Ohio State in my college football playoff in the preseason. And, man, I feel like Michigan, I know that they are a team that is playing with this chip on the shoulder, this edge, but I feel like they've also somewhat been playing with fire this year. And I don't know, man. I have this feeling it's this glorious letdown incoming with College game day in town in Ann Arbor. Karma's a bitch, and Michigan. I'm not saying that the suspension is correct, and I don't think stealing signs. Like I come from the school of baseball. Like that's just so part of the game. But karma is what it is, and it won't shock me at all if the football gods don't pay Michigan a visit this Saturday. So I think it's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch the game, guys. But I'm going to Ohio State in that ball game.
And you got to make sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Head coaching matters. So during the ball.
I gotta keep pushing the narrative ahead. They lost because Jim Harbaugh's the president.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. He was worth five or 6 points.
He was worth the touchdown. He was worth the touchdown.
Anybody else, boys?
I got everything else.
Appreciate it, brother.
Chris, we appreciate it. Absolutely. If you want to plug anything, absolutely feel free. I saw the rowback link up on top of the Twitter, so congrats on that. But yeah.
Which, by the way, quarterback is a rowback athlete. If you didn't know,
I did see that. I respect that. Listen, and it's funny too. It's funny too when rowback reached out to us and I we linked up with him or whatever, and I had some people reaching out to me like, how dare you? Cade Klubnik likes rowback. I'm like, well, he has good taste. I mean, the stuff's nice.
You might be taking his deal, honestly, if he's playing like this.
Yeah, I don't care who's wearing it. Like, whatever, man. It's good stuff. It's all equal opportunity out here. But yeah, so I'm Chris Phillips. We're at the Spurs Up Show, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you get your content. We host a daily live show called The Daily Crow, which airs on YouTube, Facebook, and X, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. We take questions, comments, and voicemail. So it's a very engaging show. Welcome all those to come out and talk, conversate. We don't just talk Gamecocks. We talk SEC as well. A lot of SEC football picks, previews, predictions, storylines, all that good stuff. We do have our own online store, tsus.store. It's not just the rowback stuff, but that's a really cool collaboration that we're excited about. Podcast drops daily, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We drop YouTube content daily. Also, by the way, for the Clemson folks who are tuned into this season, we have been hosting post-game call-in shows after every single South Carolina football game.
Man.
We will be doing that on Saturday night. It'll probably be like 11 or so, but immediately following the conclusion of the South Carolina Clemson game, win, lose, or draw, the phone lines will be open. We'll be taking calls on the air. This is completely unfiltered, unedited. There's no bleep button. It gets as wild as people want it to get. So I have a feeling that no matter what happens, it is going to be a complete shit show. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Again, I say the best way, just hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You'll get the notification. If you hit the bell icon, I think it'll pop up. But either way, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, yeah, I appreciate you guys for having me, man. This was a blast.
You're the man.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Subscribe.